With an estimated 1 in 70 people in Australia living with autism, it certainly isn't uncommon, but that being said, it can often be misunderstood and it can be worrying news for parents to discover that a child has just been diagnosed with autism. So tell me, Dr. Betty, what's the first thing parents should do if they've just gotten this diagnosis?
Well, generally it's a journey to get to the diagnosis, and it's never something that we do at your first clinic appointment. And you may have visits to lots of different allied specialists, for example, a speech therapist or an occupational therapist, or even a psychologist, before you come to that diagnosis. So I think parents usually have had a lot of warning beforehand, and they may have had time to read up on the condition that we're thinking about and maybe make their own decisions about what they want to do, but it is a very big diagnosis, and I think it's worth, the first thing to do is take a little bit of time just for yourselves, and let the news sink in, and then think about what are the things that you want to achieve for your child. So every child's different, and every child with autism is different. There's a really famous pediatrician who says when you've met one child with autism, you've just met one. You haven't, they're all different, and that means that there's not one set of interventions or therapies that will work for every child. It's very much about your child and what are their strengths and what are the things that they struggle with and where do you want to put your effort and time into. So at the beginning, there is a lot of pressure for parents to sort of make decisions and make big decisions about what they want to do. And I'd try and caution parents about doing too much too soon, and maybe taking some time out to get to know, first of all, the workings of the system, which is an effort in itself. So at the moment, the NDIS is our main go-to for help and provision of services for children, and that would be the first thing that I would ask parents to go. You can look up the NDIS and you can make a phone call, and that initial contact is actually made by the parents. We'll supply you with the evidence and letters to support your application, but that application has to be made by the parents. And once you've registered with the NDIS, then you have this next step, which is sort of looking at the different providers out there and making a choice about which one is best for your child.
So you've just given quite a few great tips. Have you got any others for parents watching right now that have just had this diagnosis?
Well, I guess the one thing that I want to make sure that everybody understands, it's not all negative. They're children who have a lot of strengths, and there'll be a lot of things that they can do, and focusing on what they can do is a good start, because then you can build on that. Some of their initial needs will be communication needs, and some children will already be accessing speech therapy or other therapies in the process of getting their diagnosis. So speak with your therapists. Your therapist will have a lot of wisdom, a lot of tips to share about what works and what you can be doing at home, so that you don't feel helpless as a
and
parent.
alone, I think.
And alone. And that's the other thing, making contact with other families or parents who have children with a similar diagnosis. And sometimes that can be difficult initially, but there's lots of resources out there. And Autism Queensland, which is previously, before we had NDIS, they used to be the main providers and the main directors to parents about what services were available. They have a lot of information online. You can just look up Autism Queensland and they will have information about sources that are local to you, which I think is important. It's all well and good to look up resources in the United States or the United Kingdom, but they may not be relevant to what you have and the provisions that you can do locally. So there's a lot you can do. The other thing is enjoy your child. There's such lovely, wonderful people. They just do things differently and they see things differently. And as long as you're looking at it from their perspective, sometimes some of the difficulties may be because they don't understand why the world does things differently from what they intuitively would think would be the right way to do. And as long as you're looking at it from their perspective, you can then sort of help them to come to terms. Don't hide. One of the tricky things is when a child has very is very difficult to go out socially and has big meltdowns in social situations, it's easy to try and stay at home and not do things. But you do need to go out and do the shopping and go out and pick the siblings up from school, and little exposure. So start with small visits. So maybe a couple of things at the shops to start with rather than a big shop.
Yeah, whole shop.
And building up on that will give them the ability to then function, because there's no way that we're going to keep them at home forever, and you can't wrap them up in cotton wool forever. But as long as you have the right support and you're introducing them gradually to the day-to-day life, they will find that hopefully easier as they go along as well.
So how can Townsville Pediatrics help them? Like when people come to you and their child has been diagnosed with autism, how do you help?
So what we do is initially we just start with taking a history, finding out what your concerns are, what the concerns that you've been told by your caregiver, childcare, or the school perhaps, and then gathering information. So we gather information from caregivers, from schools, and also from the parents. We look at your medical background and the medical background of the child to make sure that we're not missing any other things that can present in a similar fashion. And then we try and coordinate as much the information gathering. So we're sending you out to other specialists, other allied therapists, so that we gather that information. And at the end, hopefully what we'll get is not just a diagnosis, because I think that's what sometimes we end up focusing on. But the main thing is that we want to know, what are your child's strengths? And where are the areas in which they need some support? So that information we can then provide to you, and that will help with your initial application to the NDIS, because then you have some targets and some goals that you're directing your therapy towards.
So you're like the overarching hub for everything. You're the brain behind everything, making sure all the boxes are getting ticked.
I don't know if we'd say that.
No, but you know.
we try.
Yeah.
We try and be that source of, so you can come and ask us questions and we'll hopefully point you in the right direction. Even if we don't know the answers, we may know somebody else who may know the answers.
So you're like a traffic controller.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's what we do as pediatricians. A lot of the work will be done outside the clinic setting, in your therapy settings and at home. But hopefully we're there to support you along the journey as well, because it's hard for parents.
It sure is, yeah. As a parent of a child with autism, you can make a big difference in their life. However, remember to seek out support where you feel it's needed. You're doing a great job, just remember that. But if you are after a fantastic paediatrician, get in touch with the team at Townsville Pediatrics today. They'd love to help you.